last year you came out in support of a trading ban for members of Congress, and I have introduced legislation to do exactly that. You explained the need for a ban on our trading stock by saying, quote, you look at some of these eye-popping returns, every hedge fund would be jealous of them. And that, quote, if any private citizen traded that way, the SEC would be knocking on their door. Those are strong words from someone who used to run a hedge fund. Last month, President Trump's latest financial disclosures came out, and they show that he made more than 3,400 stock trades worth more than $250 million in just the first 3 months of 2026. That's roughly half of what all 535 members of Congress made last year combined. And the value of virtually every one of those stocks that the president traded in is directly affected by President Trump's official actions. So, Secretary Bessent, you and I agree that it is a conflict of interest for members of Congress to trade stocks. Do you also agree that it's a conflict of interest for President Trump to trade stocks?
Warren begins by establishing common ground. She first reminds Bessent that he previously supported banning members of Congress from trading individual stocks. Then she pivots to a broader question. If stock trading creates conflicts for lawmakers, should the same concern apply to presidents?
Well, a couple of things, Senator. One, President Trump is not sitting in the Oval Office engaging in a high-frequency trading strategy. Clearly, he had an outside manager who was doing that, and I think it's incumbent upon both houses of Congress to get their house in order before you move to the administrative branch.
You think it's okay for the president to do this? Because let's be clear, you are a Wall Street guy, so you know better. The investments that President Trump has made are not blind. President Trump literally signed the 113-page document publicly listing all of his individual stock trades at the same time that he is making decisions affecting those stocks. So you're going to sit here with straight face and say it's not a conflict of interest for the President of the United States to do that?
I'm going to say this body needs to get its house in order first.
How about we get the White House in order at the same time?
I would encourage you to do that.
I don't trade in individual stocks. I don't own any individual stocks. My house is in order. Thank you.
Senator, you're very
Mr.
rich.
Secretary.
Others on this committee can't say that, Senator.
Let's look at some individual trades.
Notice Bessent's strategy here. Rather than directly answering whether Trump's trading represents a conflict of interest, he repeatedly redirects attention back to Congress and argues lawmakers should address their own trading practices first.
On January 6th, Donald Trump purchased up to $1 million worth of NVIDIA stock. 1 week later, his administration changed U.S. policy and loosened the rules on export controls so that NVIDIA could sell its chips to China. Now the price of NVIDIA stock is through the roof. So, Secretary Bessent, you said last year if any private citizen traded the way members of Congress do, quote, the SEC would be knocking on their door. So my question is, should the SEC be knocking on President Trump's door to start an investigation over this trade?
Again, if this body wants to ban individual stock trading, which I would advocate for yourselves, start there. And if you want legislative action to continue, that's your prerogative.
At this point, Warren shifts from the general ethics debate to a specific example involving NVIDIA stock. Her argument is that presidential policy decisions can potentially affect the value of investments, raising questions about conflicts of interest. Bessent again avoids endorsing an investigation and instead emphasizes legislative action.
So it's our prerogative. So you would support our saying that President Trump should be investigated over this?
I would support
our trade should be investigated and President Trump should be investigated.
I would support you getting your house in order, Senator.
And how about the White House getting its house in order? Would you support that investigation?
Please lead by example.
I would like to see the President of the United States lead by example. You say there should be an investigation when that kind of activity takes place. How about we start with the White House?
Well,
Let's do one more.
Statute. The president
Trump bought tens of thousands of dollars worth of stock in Robinhood and the Bank of New York Mellon Corporation, known as BNY. On April 6th, your Treasury Department announced it had chosen the financial agent to implement the new Trump accounts program, BNY and its partner, Robinhood. Both stocks, of course, have risen since then. So, Secretary Bessent, let me ask you a different question. If these stock purchases that Trump made were made using inside information, would that be illegal?
The discussion now moves from ethics to legality. Warren asks whether trading based on inside information would violate the law. Importantly, she frames the question hypothetically rather than directly accusing anyone of wrongdoing.
Again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to speak to that. And I think...
Would it be worth investigating? You don't have to be a lawyer. You're the one who said what should be investigated.
Why don't we investigate many people in this committee, Senator? Many people.
And you don't think the White House should have to follow the same set of rules that are already the law?
I think you should get your house in order here.
My house is in order. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
And you should have your fellow committee members, mostly on your side of the aisle, do the same.
We need stronger anti-corruption rules and conflict of interest rules in Washington for everyone. And that includes the president and it includes Congress. And instead of draining the swamp, what Donald Trump is doing is he is enriching himself by taking advantage of his position. That is not public service. He's the one who should lead by example.
This exchange highlights a broader debate that extends far beyond this hearing room. Senator Warren's argument is that financial conflict of interest standards should apply consistently across government, whether those officials serve in Congress or in the White House. Secretary Bessent, meanwhile, repeatedly returned to the position that Congress should first address stock trading among its own members before focusing on the executive branch. One of the most notable aspects of the hearing was that the discussion never fully settled on a direct answer to Warren's central question. Instead, the conversation shifted toward who should be held accountable first and whether existing rules are sufficient to address concerns about public officials and financial interests. Questions surrounding stock ownership, financial disclosures, and potential conflicts of interest have been debated by lawmakers from both parties for years. Supporters of stricter rules argue that public confidence depends on limiting situations where government decisions could affect personal investments. Others contend that current disclosure requirements already provide transparency and oversight. Regardless of political viewpoint, this hearing reflects an ongoing conversation in Washington about ethics, accountability, and public trust. What do you think? Should stock trading restrictions apply equally to members of Congress, cabinet officials, and the president? Let us know in the comments.